are showing up. Okay, so here we go. This is the Toxic Positivity and Spiritual Bypass panel discussion. I'd like to send a personal shout out to Alicia Wood, who, when messaging me about this event, said, "Gosh, could someone lead something on toxic positivity?" And spiritual bypass is like right there. So this is a very near and dear topic to my heart. In the email group, I've dropped a lot of memes, and we talk about this. And yeah, okay. Anyway, it's true. We'll get moving. All right. So if this is your first event here at Fall Rally, welcome to it. And just a few things before we get started, so we can have our housekeeping things kind of under control real quick. I believe this afternoon we're going to do a meeting on spirit sharing, a little small rally orientation if this is your first time here. Any of the channels that have, on the side, they're called channels, that have the hashtag are text channels. And in text channels like this one, you can put text as well as pictures and GIFs. And we also, so the Welcome Center has a bunch of those. You can, here in the main room, we have a chat for this specific event. And then we also, community connections, that's those are open rooms. We're talking about all kinds of stuff. So, all right, there we go. So if we can, so anyway, you're more than welcome to visit any of those. This afternoon, right after this, we're going to move into family groups. Someone could mute themselves. I don't know who it is. But anyway, okay, well, you're not talking. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, so this right after this event, we're going to move into family groups. If for some reason you didn't get in a family group last night, or you just want to be in a family group today, we're going to put some adopted families together and watch that rock and roll. So that is right after this, and then after that, we're going to have 5 awesome workshops. All the info's on the schedule. They're led by sponsors as well as a former alumni. So all that info is on the schedule. And that's, I think that's nearly everything about our rally. Let me look at, the slides are showing up in the, although I may be able to copy and paste the slides also, but the slides should show up on the streaming area. Right now there's one called Welcome to Fall Rally, but I can also copy and paste them. All right, so that's basics of rally. If you need anything tech support, there is an amazing team that formed. There's 5 of us from all across the country. We formed about a month ago. You can see our names by event team, and just to shout out all of them and their tireless hard work. It's myself, Lynn Florin, Scott Boy, Dave Green, Claire Murphy, and Gabby Parker, used to be Hagen. All right, so anyway, let's get it started. So that's Fall Rally. Okay, so I felt like the first thing we needed to do here was define what we're talking about for toxic positivity. All right, so you should be able to see the chat. If you can't see, I'm not sure if Lynn can see the slides. So here we go. Toxic positivity is, I like this definition. I'm going to go ahead and put all of our slides. We'll give you guys access to these. So this was the definition I liked the most. And it says toxic positivity is the excessive and ineffective overgeneralization of a happy and optimistic state across all situations. The process of toxic positivity results in the denial, minimalization, and invalidation of authentic human experience. Woo! So I thought that was a really great definition of what it was. And that's from the psychology group. I'm gonna try to drop this slide in here real quick. Thank you. I've listed even in my slide where it came from. It's an incredible article on toxic positivity. And then for me, look, you could do one, obviously, but yes, let's see, hold on. Scott, are you in my slides? Can you, oh no, Lynn's is. Thank you, Lynn's foreign. So we'll start having slides drop in here, so there we go. And like I said, we can get you all the slideshow, the whole thing, so you can have the link to that. All right, we're going to move forward. Yes, Lauren.
Just real quick, can you advance the slide on the screen?
For some reason, it's not. Okay. Let me, here, I'm gonna stream again. Okay, there we go.
All right, you're going to have to push the stream, click the stream again to get it on your screen.
Okay. But it will be also in the chat. So what we're doing right...
All right, I'm out.
All right, thanks. What we're going to... so the spiritual bypass, I wanted to make sure we all were on the same page about definitions. This is the original quote where spiritual bypass came from. And I feel like it's really powerful, and so, like, literally the original form where this came from. Spiritual bypass is a term I coined to describe a process I saw happening in the Buddhist community I was in. Gonna drink some coffee. And also in myself. Although most of us were sincerely to work on ourselves, I noticed a widespread tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, or unfinished developmental tasks. John Wellwood. So again, what we're doing here right now is, just to get you on board, these are our definitions for what this panel is about. Next thing I'm going to do is introduce myself as well as our panelists. And then I have, for each of these, I have a bunch of different slides that bring up talking points. We're going to allow our panelists to discuss that. You can obviously discuss them in the chat room. And then from there, we will, let's get this started. All right, so welcome myself. I'm Betsy Junti, also at one point known as Betsy Labard. Okay, if you are not talking, if you can mute yourself, that's great. All right. I have a long history in Unity. I grew up in Unity. Start naming some of my credentials going forward, or, most recently I was the Y.O.U consultant for South Central region, but before that, I did a whole slew of things in NGU, including being the international, working on the international NGU team, working on various regional teams. Before that, I worked on Young Adults of Unity. I've also been in Adults of Unity, which is not even a made-up organization. I've done a whole lot. I was also published in a couple of different Unity publications. I've done a lot of spiritual classes. In fact, I also did a couple terms in ministerial school. Now I'm a yoga teacher. I help patients get Medicaid as a day job. And in the meantime, I'm really passionate about bringing together Y.O.Uers. Toxic positivity for me is, and this panel is really important because while I learned and grew a lot, thank you guys. While I learned and grew a lot in Unity, and it's invaluable for me, I also grew up in Unity, but also grew up with a borderline personality disorder mother. So that was like abusive, and there was a lot of trauma in my childhood. I had the gamut of basically all of your main traumas. So to be in a Unity church as a little kid and to be told things like, you pick your parents. I swear I looked at this woman at 8 years old and I said, so no one else was available? So I don't want to victim blame Unity because, again, it got me here. And also I feel like a lot of what we teach in Unity doesn't serve, or the simplification of metaphysics does not serve Y.O.Uers. And also I've seen toxic positivity and spiritual bypass. I've just seen it do a lot of damage. So running this panel was really, really important to me. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our panelists, and we have a chance to once I introduce you, I'm going to give you a chance to kind of talk a little bit more about yourself and why this panel was important to you. All right, first up, we have Lynn Barrett, who graduated in 1989. She's also known, apparently at that point, as Mickey Michael. It's funny, the reason that the reason that I picked her for this panel, I don't even think she knows this, but there was a period in the late 90s where Unity email was all the rage, and like we were just emailing each other. Again, we went from like paying per minute for long distance phone calls to like everybody being online, and oh my goodness. So Lynn actually had sent me a bunch of emails and it told me the whole story at that point about how she met her husband at the time. And one of the things that he did, and again, I was in my 20s, so like one of the things he apparently did was send weekly roses to her, and I went to all my girlfriends, and I was like, look, I don't know what we're doing, but like, we need to really, anyway, it was just sort of like a litmus test, like, that guy's great, but is he going to send you like weekly flowers? Anyway, since then, I followed Lynn like kind of online, because again, she's a friend of, if you know Jay Michael, this is his sister, so she's like had really informative posts on her counseling page that I felt like were really solid in terms of not victim blaming. Anyway, so Lynn, I'd like to give you a chance to give us a little bit about your background. She is a graduate of the class of a Y.O.U class of 89, and if you could also tell us like why you agreed to be on this panel today.
Thank you. That is so fun to hear that story. I don't remember those emails at all, but I do remember the flowers. And in my small dorm room at Iowa State, it got very crowded. So with all the right intentions, a little overkill, just saying, if anybody feels the need to live up to that expectation, just, maybe give it a couple more weeks in between sending flowers. Anyway. So, and I am so happy to be known as Jay's sister. Such an honor. He is awesome. And I am a therapist. I was a Regi rep. I was an international officer. And I became a licensed Unity teacher fairly soon after I graduated college. And I was working at Unity's headquarters, then called Association of Unity Churches, now called Unity Worldwide Ministries, and I just spent a lot of time outside of the week of conference, of Y.O.U conferences and Adults of Unity conferences, just spending time watching people come and go, and also having grown up in Unity, there were just a lot of things that didn't jibe with me the older I got, and especially by the time I got to college, there was just a lot of, I call it Unimentalism, right? Where we take a Unity teaching, like, we pick our parents, right? And then we hold that so rigidly that it becomes either a superstition and definitely a judgment against somebody else. We might as well just walk around and tell everybody they're sinning because it's the same concept, but taken, but it's got, prettier flowers around it. And being married to a Unity minister for 24 years, I just got to see a lot of interaction in churches. And I think one of the saddest things that I saw as a dynamic in churches over the years is that people would stay away from church when things weren't going well. And that certainly wasn't the teaching that my husband at the time, Greg, was teaching. We have always been about, the working on ourselves and looking at things and using the challenges in life to grow, yes, but to not judge others for that. So it wasn't anything that we were teaching, us ourselves personally, but it was so ingrained in Unity in general, and that's why people come to Unity, because they're tired of hearing about hell and damnation and, you were born horrible and all of that, but then you come into this place where people felt like the opposite had to be true. Well, now I'm just good all the time, and I have to be good all the time. And if I'm not, got the longtime Unity people who, if somebody had a cold, would say, "Well, what's in your consciousness that's causing you to feel sick? Or why are you sick all the time?" And just things like that again became these erroneous dogmas. And I was always happy to correct people with with that, because it's not kind, it's not fair, and it's not true. So I'm also, I don't know if I mentioned that I am a therapist now, also having become a licensed Unity teacher, and spiritual counseling was a thing, and teaching were the things that I loved the most. And with spiritual counseling as a licensed Unity teacher, I wasn't able to go as deep with people and help them work on the things that I knew I could, because I did it on myself. I work on my own issues, and I look at those things because I've always wanted to know, what the heck is going on inside of me that I feel angry, or that I feel, judgy towards somebody or whatever. Like, let me explore that so I know what to do with it. So I eventually, a couple of kids later, had gone back to school to become a therapist, and it's a big part of my approach as a therapist, is embracing the whole person, and seeing all of our challenges as opportunities to grow and to forgive, and to which is a heated word, and I always have to redefine that, but I'll do that later if we need to. But that thing, we're just humans, and we're in this world, and it's not just an illusion that we don't have to worry about. It's a real place where we have real feelings and real responses to things, and it's important to address those and have tools to address those, so that we can be in that, I call it my Zen zone, my inner space where I feel okay with me. So anyway, I probably talked more than I was supposed to, but yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Well, I mean, what an introduction. Thank you so much, Lynn. And as you can all see, this is why you're here. All right. We're going to continue with our panelist introduction. Calallen Webb. First things first, when I was a consultant, my Y.O.Uers would always talk about their last Regi. Do you remember your last Regi? That is Calallen Webb for me. I graduated Y.O.U at his spring rally in Southeast. So since then, I've had the honor of working with him with NGU, and also, just a number of projects over the years. And since all of that too, part of the reason I wanted Calallen to be here, if you spent more than 2 minutes with him, you know that he is zesty, fiery, which I'm excited about, so pulls no punches. And he's currently, has a degree in psychology. He currently is a global security manager specializing in investigation, and then is an FBI trained investigator. So those facial expressions on camera, Calallen, I feel can really know what's up. So loves to interview people, and I feel like he has a strong bullshit detector. Anyway, Calallen Webb, welcome. If you would like to give a small bio and why you're here, and that would be great.
Sure. I just changed over my mic so there wouldn't be feedback, so I could hear you. So am I coming across? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I don't know that I have a lot more to add to what Lynn has so so eloquently put. I guess you covered discovered that I was a Regi. Thanks. That was definitely a great growth period for me and for all of us. Not so I was a Regi, but for all of us in our teenage years, that was a great time to grow. Afterwards, I was able to. I felt the call to service to help us with NGU, and that an unexpected lesson for me there was, and it was really cool, was traveling to different churches on our own dime. But what an exposure to different, I guess, mental states in churches on how young adults are showing up or showed up at the time. And that realization that we didn't have a space to take people from Y.O.U, or rather, some churches did not have spaces developed transitioning from Y.O.U to life, which I think is probably the biggest gap that a lot of churches, not just in Unity, go through. In fact, it's so common that I think what we often heard was, this is your time to go out into the woods. Which I felt like was a very, I guess, toxic positivity or spiritual. I guess we could say identify that spiritual bypass as well as going, yeah, this is just divine order, just go out. Which for me was kind of just brushing over we don't know what to do for this age group, so we're just going to just call it divine order and not develop programming for it. And then NGU came along, in the aftermath of Y.O.U and other programs, and said, hey, no, we're young adults, we've been part of your church for, umpteen years in Y.O.U, or we're brand new to the church, as a 20-year-old, and I want to have visibility in space here also. So in those conversations with some of the churches around the country, and in some cases international, I was able to serve, and that's where Betsy and I did a lot of our bonding. So, getting back to the dogma aspect, I really liked how you called that out, Lynn, because part of my way of expressing humanity is I call out bullshit, and it's a lovely skill that I've always had, even as a leader lab. And I've been, and now I've monetized it, right? So as an investigator, when I interview people and I ask questions, there's a strategic way to ask questions, and whether or not you want them to open up more, or you want them to kind of restrict and focus their communication. And it's really around open and closing of questions, and there's a science to it. And I was doing that back with ministers and board members from churches, and it ruffled feathers. I don't know if I was doing my job right, if I wasn't getting kicked out of the church, being a rebellious young adult that knew way more than I should have known or thought that I did. So for some reason, Betsy said, "Hey, Calallen, can you come talk about this topic with us?" And so I'm honored to be here, and I'll do what I can to help kind of move the conversation forward, or to support some growth in this space.
Awesome, and thank you, Calallen. All right, next up. I asked for panelists out to the group, which is actually why a bunch of you are here, and I'm great for that. And the email I got from Brittany Young, also Brittany Landry. Here, sync my stream. I don't know if it's showing her. Okay, I chose her. This is the one of everybody, all the panelists. Brittany was the one I didn't have like a personal connection with, but I chose her partly because she's another generation, again, the 2000s, but also because of her job. And the email that she wrote to me was like, I see this a lot in my day-to-day work. And she gave some of her Unity credentials, and I was just, it just felt right. So, Brittany, welcome. If you'd like to give a little bit more of an expanded bio, and also tell us why you decided that you wanted to be a panelist.
Yeah, I grew up in Houston, and grew up in the church, and really took on leadership starting in Uniteens, and then was a leader throughout my whole high school experience, and was on our officer team, and led probably majority of the Sunday sessions. Like Y.O.U was my thing, and then naturally became a Regi my senior year. Just kind of all fell into place in that way. And in high school, I was employed by the church to work with the hold space for when staff had kids come in. I would hang out with the staff's kids and then help support our youth group, youth ministry. And that was a really interesting role to hold as like being a teenager and being just doing teenage things, also holding leadership within the teenage group, and then also being employed by the church. And to be honest, I've never really thought about how spiritual bypass and toxic positivity played a role in my time at Unity. But now, like just even being on this session so far, I felt like I did have to hold a certain role or persona wearing all of those hats. And even as a Regi, just feeling like, oh, I need to be positive, where like sometimes like everything was going wrong at the beginning of a rally and secretly we're running around trying to sort everything out. But I was like, everybody needs to have a positive experience. So kind of the way I think about toxic positivity and spiritual bypass has always been kind of, how do I handle it? How do I interact with it? And so one of the reasons why I did end up reaching out to Betsy's call is my mom was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so just as we've slowly told people, like I haven't like put it out on social media or anything like that. So I will, I know this is a safe space. So many people were coming up to me being like, it happens. God's always taking care of us. Things are happening for a reason. She's so lucky to have you. You're just so strong. And I was just like, what the heck? This is, wow, I'm realizing how much I use foul language. Like, this is shitty. Like, this is, I don't want her to have this experience. I don't want to be having this experience. And just realizing how much the toxic positivity coming at me was more about the people and what they could hold and how they could show support. And so it's just been something I've been really kind of, one, dealing with the impacts, and also like then having, do you let those people show up in the way they show up? So that's kind of why it's been kind of playing more of a role in my present. Once I graduated with Y.O.U, I kind of struggled to stay within the church, and I moved into school in Louisiana, and it was so interesting to see how much of a different vibe a Unity church in the Bible Belt versus a Unity church that was like in one of the biggest churches and considered a mega church, how different the environment was, and realizing that I was, going out on the weekends doing the college thing and could not hold the same space for these younger kids, and realized, it's my time to kind of what I thought was like, I need to be more selfish, and like be able to like just really like go out into the woods and I'll come back. And when I allowed myself to actually just be more concerned with what Brittany wanted, it just kind of took my life in a different direction. And I go to the church kind of on holidays with my family, but don't actively go to church. And really, that's mostly because I feel like my relationship to God or the Unity principles or spirituality in general happens daily. So that's kind of what I was called to talk about.
Awesome.
You want to go?
So excited that you're here. I think someone unmuted and is possibly taking their dog outside. All right, but Brittany, seriously, thank you. I am so excited that you're here and looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And our final panelist, last but certainly not least, Lilly Sandberg. Lilly Sandberg, I met when I became consultant, and she was running for Regi, and then she got Regi. And so she's on my first regional team, and thank God, because she knew so much about running rallies. Her Unity knowledge was on point, and I have to say I was a little cynical when I met her, so I was like, this girl just knows all the Unity answers, but actually she kind of lives all the Unity stuff. So even when I met her, she was like, I'm going to be a Unity minister, and like, again, a little cynical, Betsy was like, okay, yeah, that's what everybody says when they're a 17-year-old Regi, but Lilly is actually in her second year after finishing college in New Mexico of Unity Institute, so actually is in, on the path to being a Unity minister, and most recently, you can always be a little bit of a proud consultant, is leading talks in her church on white supremacy and Black Lives Matter. Basically, again, how do your former consultants feel about you? All right, so anyway, one of my favorite humans on earth, Lilly Mae Sandberg. Welcome to it. So, Lilly, if you would like to give us a bio and why you're here, and let's do this.
Yeah, hey yo, I am stoked to be here. Betsy texted me and it was the quickest yes I think I've given in a long time. Born and raised in Unity, Lynn. I grew up in Albuquerque, and so I think I've known you most of my life. So it's a small Unity world, but fun to get to connect. Was in Y.O.U. That was my thing. We planned chapter rallies. We had a lineage of leaders in official capacities and non-official capacities for my church, and so it was whether I wanted to or not, Regi was part of my path. Myself and my younger sister were part of a line of some really badass people from Albuquerque who got to serve in Y.O.U. And afterwards, I came back, worked with Betsy, did some Unitine events with the middle schoolers. Don't know if I'll ever do that again, but it was fun for the time. And I've worked both in my home church in Albuquerque, but also worked for close to a year in Phoenix on their staff. Volunteer and outreach is kind of where my heart lives in the Unity movement, being able to figure out who someone is, what makes them alive, and finding a space where they can better the world in the way that only they can do. That's where I feel alive. That's where I think I support this movement and the people in my community. I am indeed in ministerial school. I've known since I was about 7 or 8 that was my call, and have ruffled some feathers, made some space, put my foot in my mouth about 1.5 million times, and will continue to do it because if you don't see yourself in leadership, you don't show up very often. And I feel like that is where we are missing in Unity. So being 24, I'm in class with many people my parents' age, my grandparents' age, and I am here to bring down the median age of Unity ministers, knowing that there is a space for us when we can shovel through all of this bullshit that we have been programmed, that we have to be happy, we have to be positive, we have to be ministerial in every moment. I'm just not interested in that. And so when I was asked to talk about toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing, I said yes, because that's all my stuff. Growing up in Unity, having the Unity principles be so deeply foundational for me, having affirmations be part of my process, it meant that I wasn't very good at being honoring of myself, honoring of my feelings. I wasn't very good at feeling my feelings or identifying my feelings. So after a good amount of therapy before I got in ministerial school, I'm realizing that we don't do a service to our people, whether it's our kids or our bigger congregations, when we misuse our principles to convince each other that we have to be on our game all the time, and we don't make space for the shitty parts of life. And so being able to hold space for good, bad, and ugly, you are loved in all of it. That is why I'm here. That's what I think unity is about. And I think we have been so misusing of principles that are incredibly powerful because we want to maintain an image of who we want to be, which is awesome and also can be very unhealthy. So it's all about finding that balance, because man, spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity, they are great skills and coping strategies that have been very effective. We've all used them. It's why we're here. It's why we need to talk about this, because when we continue to pull on things that are not healthy and are not authentic and are shortchanging our experience of being so gloriously messy humans, we're doing a disservice to our greater world and the people around us. So that's why I'm here. That's why I said yes. That's why I'm so stoked to be here. And that's why I continue to be in this movement, continue to show up as a young person, and continue to call an older way of being in this movement on their BS, because some of it is BS.
All right. So, yeah, Lilly Sandberg, ladies and gentlemen, pretty excited about that. So here's how this panel is going to work. I'm going to show a couple of slides. I'm going to talk a little about that slide. And then I'm going to also allow our panelists to talk about these slides. We may not get through everything. I might skip some stuff, but let's get to it. So our first set of slides, what is it about Unity's beliefs, or Youth of Unity's beliefs? Because sometimes those are two different things that lend themselves so well to toxic positivity and spiritual bypass. For me, I'm going to say that I think that it's there's one God and he's all good, right? Okay. So, and then this, have you ever been told, and we've already started this conversation, what did you do, what did you think to attract that into your life? And again, this becomes a really simple way to victim blame and move ourselves away from, we don't have to have empathy if it's your fault that you thought these things. So then even if I may,
No.
Actually, if we can check mics on, okay, I think we're good. Okay, so things I've never heard about Myrtle, Fillmore. Okay, so here's the thing, right? I worked in Silent Unity, and it was a really common joke. If you had a bad call, what did you do to attract that call into your life? And one of my friends got really mad and was like, if I punch you in the face, what did you do to attract me punching you in the face? All right, things I've never heard about Myrtle. Never once, when we talk about the Myrtle story of how she healed herself of tuberculosis, it's what do you think that this young girl did to attract this terrible disease into her life? Never say that. Not a part of the Unity story. I've literally never heard that. It's not a thing. And then, things I've never heard about Myrtle, let's do affirmations like Myrtle. So here's the thing. According to the story I understand, Myrtle, to heal herself from tuberculosis, for 2 years of her life, 8 hours a day, would sit with a picture of her and Jesus and say her affirmation over, I'm a child of God and therefore do not inherit sickness. Never once have I been to an 8-hour day of Unity people sitting around just saying affirmations, looking at a picture of Jesus. So then we're like, okay, how do we do affirmations? Well, we, put some on our mirror and call it good. Anyway, where I'm going with all of this is, so just throwing out a whole bunch of different ideas. So where's the control group from Myrtle's story, right? Exactly. Wow, we are just cranking. So what I'm gonna do now is open it up to our panelists. And again, this is to allow some conversation about this. If any of our panelists would like to comment on any of these parts, I can move on to some other slides. Take it away.
So Betsy, this is Lynn, and this is I love how you brought Myrtle into that, and just taking us back to what is Unity supposed to be about, because it, just like in Christianity, Jesus' teachings have really gotten lost over the years unless we're really looking at, Jesus' teachings, and that's true in Unity too. And my first notes that I took after we talked about this panel was all of the unimentalist statements that I've received over the years, all kind of in this vein of, like when people say cancel after they said something negative. And I would just, it was so perplexing to me, because I'm like, what is it that you actually think saying cancel is doing? It's like, it's like, well, rub your rabbit's foot while you're at it, because it's going to do about the same thing. And I could get a little bit.
But the rabbit really appreciates it, though.
If it's still alive, I imagine it does. So true. Good point. I say on that one. One of the other things that I used to hear was the universe doesn't hear or understand the word not. So if I say I'm not sick, then I'm really saying I'm sick, because the universe doesn't understand the word not. And again, just thinking that through on a logical level, I believe that my mind and my universe are a lot more intelligent than that. So, just some of these little things that people, again, they felt more like superstitions than.
Yeah, I'm so glad you called that out and you're speaking to that, because I haven't thought about some of these things in years, and like I remember in Y.O.U. hearing about how the universe doesn't hear not, and I'm thinking, where does this come from? Who came up with this? And where? Oh, it's just divinely inspired. What? I have a really hard time with that. Because
Hashtag other things Myrtle never said, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And I really like how you put that about how I believe my mind and the universe is in tune to my intention. And what I mean is, I mean the word not in the sentence. And I trust that the universe recognizes that.
I've heard it too, as like people would say something negative and then they would say cancel, delete. So it'd be like, or even I knew somebody who held really strong. She'd been in a Unity board meeting with a bunch of people, and she said, "Let's take a break." And she walked outside and broke her leg, and everyone said, "Oh, we can't ever say that ever again, because look at, she said, let's take a break," as in from a meeting, and then broke her leg. So clearly that proves that our thoughts create our, like, as if, and therefore it's, well, now I never say take a break. I don't think that that's how that really works. I was answering Alicia's question about the cancel thing.
How any of this works, right? Yeah, it's almost like we're living in a matrix, right? Like there's the conspiracy theory that we're all living in a matrix, and maybe there's some master coder who's just seeing what we're reading as text and be like, "Oh, let's take a break. Oh, okay. Oh, they want a break. Okay, here we go."
I'm gonna, unless our other panelists would like to contribute, I'm gonna continue on with some more meaty, delicious slides. All right,
I love
to go.
it.
Oh, thank you. All right, so I was gonna stop there. All right, we kind of touched on this before. Have you ever had something bad happen to you, only to be told one or both, "It's all good. It's all in divine order." Again, as if those are, woo. Now I'm going to bring, these are some quotes that I found, and I'm going to tell you that when I saw these taking spiritual education classes, I got mad that we didn't talk about this in Y.O.U. because so often in Y.O.U. I feel like it is, we're just told that unity, everything's great, okay? And that means all things are good. And then I feel like right away there's a jump to, well, what about the Holocaust? But anyway, I'm going to read these quotes and then open it up to my panelists. Here we go. "We should not assume that all manifestation is good because the originating idea came from divine mind." Charles Fillmore, Christian Healing. And then this, clearly all manifestation is not God and all manifestation is not good. Maybe we can take a breath there. Woo! Okay, so, in any case, all right. Open it up for the panelists. Oh, yeah, I think that was, yes. Open it up for our panelists. What are your thoughts? Go ahead. And Liz is bringing these up. In fact, I'm going to call you out, Lily. Go ahead. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, well, I went and got one of my ministerial textbooks so that we can figure out what the heck order is. I just want to set a divine order precedent, because how we use it, everything's in divine order as a way to cover up shitty situations and devalue true emotions and true struggle and human circumstance and belittle emotion. It's not what it's about. It's not what it is. And we use it like that all the time. That is not divine order. So the power of order is the power, principle, or divine idea of our ability to sequence, organize, and adjust and be flexible. We also know that the power of order means that when we use our 12 powers, throwing it back, we're going to go a little bit into it. Power of order is typically utilized with the power of power as well. Power of power originates in the root of the tongue, typically the power of the word. So when we are sequencing the life that we are living, that does not mean that we can control everything. That means that we control our reality and what's in front of us. So if we have someone we love in a car crash, that is not divine order. That is order for us to be able to say, I did not sequence that events, and I am human in this space, and so I am going to use the power of my word, the power of power, to be able to take care of myself and the people around me by speaking what is true for me. That is the link between the power of divine order, which is outside of us, a greater sequencing of the world, versus our personal power of order, which is sequencing our reality based on our thoughts, based on our ideas, based on our expression, and typically with our power of the word. And we do a massive disservice when we say, oh, everything is in divine order, to a person who is grieving or to a person who's in the pits of it. And I hear it so often still in ministerial school with ministerial students that, oh, it's all in divine order. I'm just going to say the power of divine order is one of the ways that unity spiritually bypasses all of the stuff we are not ready to deal with. And we don't have to deal with really big, tough emotions when we are in an unsafe space or when we are triggered. That is not what we are called to do. We are called to deal with it when we are in a space that we can. But when we say everything's in divine order and we don't come back to the stuff that is ours to deal with, the emotions that are real, our human, authentic experience, we are bypassing the crap out of all of this stuff. So I think divine order should not be utilized unless we know if we are talking about divine order from a spirit universe standpoint or divine order from our personal reality. And even then, our personal reality, we don't create all of the crap that happens to us. That is so misused that we think we are big enough to cause that shit.
Awesome points. Brittany, would you like to jump in here?
I was thinking, my stance is that we have a huge responsibility to take on our own healing. And so when we use it's just divine order, or I was in the sense of I was born this way, and these are my circumstances, we're doing a huge disservice to our own healing, and then what's possible for ourselves in this lifetime. And it's really easy to blame or put the responsibility on things outside ourselves. And having a relationship with spirit or God or teachers, I think that what Y.O.U did a really great job at least my experience, was to question everything and have your truth come from within. And the healing happens in that way too. And as things arise, it's an opportunity to heal and to take the time to really look at that stuff in your life. And when you sweep things under the rug, I think that's as much as, I think what I'm trying to say is watching when we do it to ourselves. So yeah, of course, I've been in meetings or been in situations, but when have I been struggling with something or something kind of shitty happens and I'm like, oh, it's just like, it's divine timing. Oh, I guess this is just like how it had to happen. And then I'm not taking that sense of responsibility and agency in my own life.
Agreed. Awesome. All right, let's continue with some more slides. I went and I did some, website hunting. I wish I could say it wasn't last night, but y'all, this rally has been a lot. So let's do this. I just loved how this was put. It was so cute on this website. Let's not do this, please and thank you. It's dangerous and harmful and insulting and agenda pushing, and it's not client-centered or trauma-informed. Get out of here with your healing light, unless I specifically requested healing light, basically. Get out of here with my soul asked for this, or your trauma is your greatest gift. Oh, I love it so much, partly because as someone who's had a lot of trauma, these I feel like are common things that I've been told in Unity. And then this, oh my gosh, this article, oh, so good. When does a good attitude become toxic positivity? This one part just really spoke to me. Even if you're trying to cheer up someone, diminishing someone's difficult experiences can leave them feeling that they should hide their negative feelings in the future. I mean, yeah, okay. Anyway, we have to make the disassociation between who we really are and the mask we're putting on for the world. Long, who's in this article, said, in that gap, there's shame. All right, so any of our panelists wanting to jump in? I'm sorry, Sydney. Your message cracks me up. But anyway, any of our panelists ready to take the mic and go with this? I'm going to just ask, just to keep going with the flow, Lynn, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I shared in the chat section a little bit earlier that when somebody's saying these things and diminishing what they're experiencing in the moment, diminishing their emotion around it, their whole self that's in that experience. Often, I've just learned from observation over the years, often it's because the person saying those things don't know how to handle the emotion that's coming up in them. I heard somebody say in an interview a long time ago, oh my gosh, it was somebody who was born with, just half of his arm. And he said, people want to know, people often ask me what happened. And he said, once I say that, I was born this way, he said, there's kind of a relief in the other person, like, oh my gosh, it's not contagious. So much of what people say to each other is a reaction to whatever's happening in the moment, but a reaction that comes from their own unresolved or unprocessed or unskilled emotional bodies. And it's not to make excuses for them at all, but to understand, that's how these phrases become so bromide, if you will, and just completely they don't mean anything, except hurt to the person who's on the receiving end of them. So I don't know if that's a helpful insight at all, but that's just what I've noticed over the years.
I definitely think that that's helpful because one of the things I think the toxic positivity allows us, I couldn't find this article last night, but I read this article that basically explained that part of the reason that we do this so that we can create separation from ourselves. If someone, we'll just use an illness, if someone has an illness, but I believe that their thoughts create their reality, then I believe, again, this is like some unity geometry here, but we play these games like, so if their thoughts create their reality, then look at the terrible things they must have thought to become ill. Even though we don't play that game with Myrtle, sweet Myrtle, but anyway, thoughts create their reality, and that's what caused them to become ill. My thoughts, because clearly I'm healthy, my thoughts are pristine. Therefore, I don't really have to have empathy for them because they kind of brought it on themselves. Like, they brought it, like, people think that they brought it on themselves. Even like, why is there, there's breast cancer month, but there's not lung cancer month because we blame people who have lung cancer. It's kind of your fault with smoking, even though, again, not everyone has lung cancer ever smoked. So I think Calallen was trying to pipe in there, and if you were, go right ahead.
I was just being your hype man on the side. And then I think you said the exact words that I was saying about that absolution. It's like people do this to absolve themselves. Like, oh, you know what? This isn't my journey, it's their journey. So, hey, good luck with that. Hakuna Matata, bitch. Like,
but that's true. That's really it. Like, there is that element of it allows me to separate myself from them. And I remember once I was at a rally, and I have a gluten allergy, and even my discovery of my gluten allergy was like this huge journey, and it was really hard and quite painful. And I'm in line, and a sponsor who I do love, but she was like, she also grew up in Unity. I grew up in Unity, and she was like, I see that you have this gluten allergy, but I was taught when I was a kid in Unity that I could eat anything I want and I would be okay. As if my Unity church, like, we were sitting around, like, focusing on, I don't know, like, what thought would have to come, up in me for me to have created a gluten allergy. And anyone that's ever had an eclair, I would argue, would never create a gluten allergy. So again, it's, I grew up in that same church, and here I am, gluten intolerant, not for, again, I miss eclairs, but like, it's, yeah, I think you were going to say something, Calallen, and please go ahead.
all right, it's got to be a fine line, right? Like, I guess where I'm at with this thought is we know shitty things happen, and yes, sometimes we are the architect of that. Some of the conflicts that I have, I can look back and see like, yep, I could have made better choices leading into that. So yeah, sure, I have to own that, especially if I want to make sure I don't do that again. So okay, recognizing that, then it's like, okay, well, how much power do I want to let this have over me? So sure, there's that side of it, but then there's the other side of it of like, excuse me, there's the other side of it of finding that balance of, you know what, there was no avoiding this. There was no avoiding, I did all the things that I thought that I should be doing. So, if I help bring into the world this child that has this issue, what kind of, and I've heard it phrased as metaphysical malpractice. That's not my phrase, but man, do I like it. And so, if I have a child that has a challenging disease, then or what we view that as, and even now I'm like unity speaking in my brain as we're having this conversation, which doesn't feel authentic to me. But I think you all know where I'm going with that, what I'm trying to struggle in saying. Like, there's a balance between acknowledging, dealing with it, not having it have control over your life, but also not minimizing it and just creating this pattern where you're going to have to revisit it or be in a situation where you're revisiting it with others.
Awesome. Anybody else? Anybody else wanted to? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to jump in. I think where I have been able to do a lot of really tough growth is not having my toxic positivity be my knee jerk. what I'm hearing you say is if there's a piece of this that I created, being able to acknowledge that after the fact, be able to see it from kind of a greater perspective, and then figure out, was this unavoidable? Asking the question, getting curious, staying in a place of non-judgment to be able to grow and learn from this experience, no matter how crummy it was. But where I had, have had numerous opportunities to see my toxic positivity be immediate for me is when I am in the thick of it, I'm not sitting in all of it and just, being gentle with myself and feeling what's coming up, but I'm instantly looking for the gratitude. I'm instantly looking for the lesson. I would be instantly looking for, how is this helping me? How is this growing? How is this good? How is this God? That I was looking for all of those things because it was so deeply programmed in me that that's where I instantly went. And I did not ever get to the point that was not healthy for me until it, hit me like a ton of bricks, that I was completely bypassing all of the stuff that I didn't have skills to deal with, I didn't want to deal with, I didn't have the resilience to sit in the big stuff of it. And so, yes, I think it is this dance of figuring out when you're in it, being in it, and then taking that bird's eye view afterwards and not instantly going there, because then we shortchange that necessary experience of going through it with ourselves and with the people around us before going to gratitude or whatever is our kind of knee-jerk toxic positivity response.
I'll jump in. It's something I've been kind of working on personally, and actually I have a current client who was a Y.O.U.er and had something traumatic happen as she was running for Regi, and was told to not run for Regi. And then her life kind of took her on a different path. And we talk a lot about like how that affected our relationship to God and to the church, and something to just, I don't know, a way to look at kind of the same thing is a lot of people relate to their higher power as in what they experience from their parents as children. And from the people I've interacted with and met in Y.O.U, just the backgrounds. I mean, was just so, when I reflect on hearing stories from people in family groups or as Regi, I would get tons of messages of the things people were dealing with at home. And it felt unique. Like these people were going through something that I wasn't seeing in my school, or like in my public school. Not that wasn't happening, but not at like the density, if that makes any sense. It just, in my friends in Y.O.U, a lot of them were single parents, or they were taking care of their siblings or going through some intense things. And so that's traumatic, right? And so when we talk about like people that are aging through, growing up in Y.O.U and aging through without addressing the trauma and always kind of putting like the positive sprinkles onto situations, I think then we're hurting each other, right? And like that gluten story, like I was lactose intolerant and remember being told like, well, how about you like manifest not being like intolerant? And I was like, how about like I'm not gassy in the van ride on the way back? Like that just sounds better for me and for everyone. And still to this day, it's I choose not to have dairy, ice cream every now and then. It still impacts my system, and I choose to honor my body in that way. So just kind of what my question, for people to kind of reflect on is like, how has your relationship to your higher power evolved, and how kind of has that mimicked your relationship with your parents? Speaking from my side, I sometimes feel really complicated with my relationship to God as this masculine figure. And realizing why that was so hard for me, especially as a young person, is because my dad wasn't really in my life in my childhood. And seeing how that kind of overlapped and where I felt like this was, the 90s and the 2000s. Now I feel like I hear all the time that, like, God is the her, and I don't really relate to God as, like, this one individual. But as a small child growing up in the church, trying to relate to this masculine figure was really complicated for little Brittany. So that I forgot what words. Oh, there was the trauma informed, and how when we're again not with that, when we're not responsible for our own trauma, how then we create more trauma for others, and why this conversation is so important.
Wow. Woo! It's y'all, this is amazing. All right, we're gonna shift into some more slides. Okay, let me just say before I started, the next two slides are from a book that I almost could have read verbatim for this, because the book title is Spiritual Bypassing, when spirituality disconnects us from what really matters. It's Robert Augustus Masters. I will drop this in the recommendation section, so you can immediately go to Amazon and buy this book, or your local bookstore, of course. Yes, smalls. Anyway, okay, let's get to the quote. Whew, if we really want the light, we cannot flee the heat. As Viktor Frankl said, what gives us light must endure burning. And being with the fire's heat doesn't mean just sitting with the difficult stuff in meditation, but also going into it, trekking to its core, facing and entering and getting intimate with whatever is there, however scary or sad, traumatic, sad, or raw. So I felt like this quote was really important because of the fact that how many of us, I just remember having been a Y.O.U and a consultant and a sponsor, we are always all about the light, and let's send love and light, but what gives light must endure burning. Such good stuff. I'm going to read one more quote and then open it up. Okay, here we go. Get ready for some more spiritual bypassing. Again, I could have read this whole book, and that would be it. There's so many good quotes. When transcendence of our personal history takes precedence over intimacy with our personal history, spiritual bypassing is inevitable. To not be intimate with our past, not to be deeply and thoroughly acquainted with our conditioning and its originating factors, keeps it undigested and unintegrated, and therefore very much present, regardless of our apparent capacity for rising above it. So this to me speaks to that concept of of rising. I feel like this is a common theme in Y.O.U as we simplify metaphysical principles, but I could also make the argument for, I believe, a lot of what we do in Unity, especially with younger people, is there's an assumption that younger people can't understand, like, raw, metaphysics. So we teach them things like, it's all good, and then adults are like, oh my gosh, if I had just learned that when I was a kid, it would be great. Versus, again, giving us real meaty spiritual tools to survive life. So, let's, I'm going to open it up to the panelists. Anybody have a burning desire to...
I would love to speak to that. It also goes back to something Lilly said, too, about skills. And earlier in the chat, I'm going to do it again right now. I'm linking to a page that lists the 5 Unity principles. And if we look at those and take them literally, we are going to have problems. And one of the things that Unity has not known how to do well is teach people skills. Prayer and meditation is not the only thing that we need for our emotional management and healing and resilience. I think that's a huge factor. It's something that when Greg and I were in ministry together, that was our purpose. That was our core education about what to do if these things come up. Because I tell you what, if you are a meditator, shit's going to come up, because that's what meditation does. It's not about being blissed out all the time. It's about knowing who we are at the core, the good, the bad, the ugly, the awesome. And that's how we know the truth that sets us free, is we know the things that are in there causing problems for us too, or how to get stronger so we can deal with the things on the outside that are causing us problems. And I think that skills are what unity grossly lacks.
All right, we had a couple people wanted to jump in. I will pass the mic to.
I'll play.
Okay.
So, I really like the imagery that I just received. It was hitting me when it says, keeps it undigested and unintegrated, and therefore very much present. And if you're pardon the graphic nature of this, I'm picturing like eating a Thanksgiving meal for those of us in America. I think most of us are here, so we're familiar with what Thanksgiving is. And just like not digesting, like eating this huge family meal with your family, and there's a lot of trauma and emotional stuff that can come up during those, for some people, for some families, during those gatherings, and not digesting it. And just the metaphor of that happening in our lives, it's really profound to me. So I think a really big part of that, of digesting it, is the acknowledgement. And I think so much of toxic positivity is that denial. It's just denying that it happened. And it is such a disservice to yourself and those that are in your immediate circle. So it is so important to, avoid ignoring, avoid the suppression, and to validate it. So that's part of the digestion. That's part of the integration. It's part of getting it from being present and I guess honoring the experience for what it is, which I think is essentially what we're saying here. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
I'd love to comment about denial. Is that okay?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I wish I could see you guys. I would. I'm so like. Different things come out when I'm like looking into someone's eyes. I'm like, are we going on to the next thing or not, kind of thing. But with denial, I'm a life coach. My husband's a therapist, and we've done a lot of work on ourselves, which means nothing. But we still are like, as we're so present to denial and helping other people presence themselves to denial, or like when they are in denial, how often like we'll be like, wait, something happened, and I like put myself in a place of denial as a protective mechanism, and that was 4 days ago or 3 weeks ago, or hey, that moment with your mom, I like took myself out of it as a protection thing. And as people with like traumatic experiences, and when we say traumatic too, there's like things that were like, yes, it's definitely traumatic, like divorce or sexual harassment or things like that in your childhood. But if you've seen a toddler and you take away their like toy, like that can be very traumatic in a sense too, right? Like, so if you're listening and you're like, well, I didn't have all these things. Did I have trauma? Like, we all grew up and then made decisions about the world and then still operate in ways to keep ourselves protected. And a lot of those things were learned. Like, we chose those things as like 6-year-olds. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And so for me and my childhood, I definitely was like, I'm a Pisces too, for those who love astrology. I'm a dreamer. I love to like go in my daydreams. I can like sit and drink coffee for an hour and just like be in la la land. And that's how I learned to survive the more intense things in my childhood. And so I go back into that often. And then that denial is what like impacts, I guess. It impacts like my ability to show up for other people. But it's also just kind of like a common thing that we pop in and out of. And so I just wanted to share that to be something that might be helpful for someone as a takeaway.
And I just want to connect it back with the concept of denials and affirmations. I don't know about many of you, but I feel like I'm a pretty good affirmer. The I am statements I can rock. You know, I had them sticky noted everywhere, and I can call upon my affirmations. But man, it's a 2-part process, and being able to speak a denial, and that's the piece that I feel like we're missing, because we don't want to talk about what a denial is. And so, you know, my understanding is denials are statements of release, not denying facts or feelings or emotions, but denying that those have power over us. And it's not in denial, challenging what's happening in the world, but it's being able to remind ourselves that no matter what's happening, we can choose how to show up. And a lot of times I feel like when I use denials, they're really half-hearted and shitty because I'm not ready to release this, that I'm still stuck in this stuff. And so it doesn't make sense to add an affirmation onto that, because it's not going to be powerful, it's not going to be grounded, and it's not going to be true. And so I feel like when we just kind of gloss over with all of these affirmative statements of, you know, yeah, I just lost my job, and, you know, and I'm terrified of getting COVID and all of this stuff, but, you know, I am bountiful and I am blessed. That, if that doesn't feel right to you, you're not doing anything over than plastering over your humanity and being able to get the help that you need in that moment with those things that are coming up. And so I feel like that, for me, affirmations was part of my toxic positivity in figuring out how to use denials effectively, how to know when I'm ready to actually speak into existence something else. Because when I'm in the thick of it and I'm in the victim role, sometimes I'm comforted there. And I mean, toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing, it's such a big thing because they're effective. These are coping strategies that are very effective. And so being able to realize, when is this helpful and when is this hurtful for me as a person right now? I think that's what these spiritual tools need to have the lens of being able to question. But man, I feel like we shortchange our kids because we do not give concrete examples and work and holding space for denials in partnership with affirmations.
I agree completely. I also think that, like, I mean, I really could hold a whole, possibly a whole rally on ways I believe that unity could better serve kids, teens, young adults, basically anyone who's not walking in the door at age 40. Not that our divorced moms are bad. I don't want to say that that's everybody, but I will say that, like, a lot of Unity kids I know showed up at the door when their moms got divorced. Hi, you know, and here we are. So, in any case, so I love that we're going to a place of talking about Unity's denials and affirmations, because I definitely think that a metaphysical malpractice over Unity's denials is this idea that we just now deny reality. You know, I'll bring up a concept too, because a lot of, I think, in toxic positivity and spiritual bypass, a lot of what you're dealing with is privilege. So I'll tell a story. A ministerial student I knew who I was a fan of, okay, so she's a wonderful human, and she says she has this vision. God says, hey, person, you need to go to Israel. And so then she says to me, Betsy, I manifested this trip to Israel. I'm like, okay, cool. How did you do it? I'm thinking treasure maps, mental movies. She said, well, I put it on my credit card. So my response is that really manifesting, or is it privilege? Because because of her gender and her race, she had a large credit card, and therefore she could go to Israel. So, again, when speaking of all of this, privilege, I think, is really, really important because I grew up in Unity, but I grew up poor, which, again, how are you manifesting these terrible thoughts, and not, manifesting abundance? Manifested by MasterCard. Yeah. maybe it's MasterCard. Maybe it's privilege. Anyway, so I didn't know if I do have another slide, but I didn't know if any of our panelists wanted to comment on how does privilege affect all of this. I mean, my thoughts are pretty complete. So,
I think it's a great conversation.
Yes.
To misjudge silence as apathy, and I just want to say that if a lot of you are your ears are turning as mine is right now, it's going to sound like silence, right? But it's only because it's like, wow, I did not come prepared to talk about, like, I didn't come mentally prepared to talk about the privilege aspects of unity as unity expresses its concepts. And I feel like that is such a rich conversation that I would love to have, but like I don't know how to contribute to that part of the conversation right now. But I would love to revisit that at another time, and that could be a great chat discussion too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not shutting anyone down. If anyone else has thoughts, definitely dive in. I want to hear them. But yeah, that privilege aspect of unity, it kind of tastes like the Democrats in 2016. Sorry to go so political there, but there's a lot of assumption, a lot of privilege there. So let's move off right along. Let's just keep us going, Betsy.
All right.
I'm actually really curious because Lily's unmuted. I was, as things have happened throughout 2020, I've been really curious how this younger generation does operate in Y.O.U. and in Unity, who they're such initiators to even call out millennials and being like, hey, we could be doing better. Like, we have something to look at here. And just even seeing how much Myrtle gets, like, passed over. So, we're talking about I get like white privilege or financial privilege, and then there's just I've been really thinking about her a lot and how her story isn't, at least at my church, wasn't told nearly in the same amount of times and things like that. So but Lily, I know you probably have so many other thoughts on that.
Well, I just I just invite you to think about your Unity Church growing up. Think about the age spread, the gender expression spread, the ethnicity spread, the language spread, the socioeconomic spread. Most churches, not just Unity, are white, are older, are more female than they are male in the binary, and fairly educated. That is the typical spread of a Unity church. And that is a fairly typical spread of just what I'm seeing in ministerial school right now. In the last year, from all of the Unity graduating programs, there was 64 ministers that graduated. Of those, 47 identified as female, and 56 out of the 64 were white. There is a long, long history that, if you're interested, I invite you to go digging about the racist roots of Unity, about the separation of people on campus for ministerial school, of the working conditions, of all of that, including in Silent Unity. And so being able to understand that is part of our foundation, not only as a country, but also this movement. And I think there is some change right now. I am comforted and encouraged by being a part of some conversations beginning to happen in a unity sphere about privilege and what it means to be a leader with privilege and what it means to be a minister of a community of privilege, and how so much of unity, specifically in my world where my heart is, being able to find a way to support and not have a white savior complex come into outreach, that I'm encouraged, and it is so far to go. In my current program, I have one class on inclusive ministry out of a 3-year program. And so that just shows you where the value is. Granted, this inclusive ministry class, I think, is awesome. I'm reading stuff that I learned in my BA of sociology. So we are pushing this envelope and having these conversations, but I do not think it is happening at a fast enough pace. And a lot of that is we are not pushing our people to look at their own privilege. That we know that privilege, just like our spiritual principles, start on the inside, manifest on the outside. And so being able to have these conversations in a church setting that we have not had a great track record of doing or engaging in because they're so uncomfortable, and yet they're so necessary. And so I think privilege is the next hurdle that unity will have to overcome, and if we don't, it will die.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, just oh goodness, what I'm feel so completely fed by this conversation, the chat, this is really it's really exciting to yeah. All right, so I'm going to move on to what is ultimately my last slide, and then from there, if we have a little bit of time, we can take some audience questions. I wanted to kind of lead us on a path of, okay, so how do we get out of this? And how do we really, again, it's not that, I feel like a lot of what happens here, I'm going to advance my slides a little, but a lot of what happens in a toxic positivity, spiritual bypass, we start bringing this up. A lot of what comes up for me is my personal story of here's how I wasn't heard in unity. Here's how I wasn't seen in unity. Here's how my trauma was dismissed. And then it's helpful if people can say, Betsy, I see and hear your trauma, and I'm sorry that was dismissed. But we don't really have the forum for that exactly. So I'm going to move on to my last slide, which is this, which was a great article from Lifehacker called How to Avoid Toxic Positivity and Handle It When It Comes Your Way. And these are, taking a different shift, these are like, how do you do this? How do you really solve this? So here's what they said. Okay, avoid ignoring or try to suppress your genuine emotions. Listen to and validate other people, even if they're sad and that makes you uncomfortable. Oh, this is so hard. Do not offer unsolicited advice. Do not shame anyone, including yourself, for their emotions. This sounds so easy, right? Okay, I'm totally kidding. Remember that feeling bad, sad, negative, not okay is completely normal, especially during times like these where we're all trying to process so many things at once. I mean, and one of the things that I found, especially in researching this topic right now, is that this is super common with the pandemic, where it's like, guys, since we're all at home, why don't we take up a billion different, why don't we monetize all of our hobbies and do a whole bunch of more stuff and bake bread and garden. I mean, I love baking bread and gardening, and I totally got a pandemic dog, and it's the best decision I've ever made. But in any case, so here we go. How do we do this? And I'm going to open it up to my panelists if anyone wants to take on this shift. And if I had to call somebody out, Lynn, I'd be curious. Your thoughts?
So your question is, how do we do this? What this are you referring to?
That's a fair question. How do we not spiritual bypass? How do we not have how do we shift from toxic positivity to facing I guess I was looking at the slide itself. Yes.
Yeah. So one of the books that I've loved in the last several months is My Grandmother's Hands. And this is talking about, the author's talking about racism and how he grew up and all of that, but he's also a therapist, a somatic processor. And his, to grossly simplify what I have found most meaningful from this is that everything starts within us. And so when we are having reactions to things, our bodies are telling us and will lead us to what it is that we need to do for ourselves. And keeping that counsel is so important to taking responsibility for ourselves. And if everybody did that, but everybody isn't going to do that. Everybody isn't going to say, oh, wow, hearing about your trauma is triggering me, and my limbic system is now all shaken up, and I'm having a reaction, and I don't even know how to respond to you, so I'm just going to say something asinine and walk away trying to feel good about myself. It's unfortunately not everybody is that awake. Not everybody is that ready to be emotionally responsible for themselves. So what we can do is do that for ourselves.
How are you? Did you sleep well?
Oh,
Yes, I did sleep well, but no. Anyway.
So anyway.
Yeah, I'll pick up from there. So I think that actually what Lifehacker has and you, Betsy, have put up here is a good step-by-step, but it's going to take practice. And that practice, I think, should really happen with ourselves and how we are addressing our own stuff. So a lot of that is about communicating with others, right? Do not offer unsolicited advice. But that first one up there, avoid ignoring or trying to suppress your genuine emotions. I feel like that's a good step one here. And then I think that by practicing that then gives us an on-road, maybe an on-ramp to maybe working with this, and then we can model that for those of us that that have a circle around us.
I think that's absolutely awesome. If y'all don't have a feelings wheel, I invite you to get one. It is a therapy tactic. You can Google it, but it basically is some core emotions that expand out, and it gives some vocabulary. One of my greatest tools from therapy has been my feelings wheel. I have one on my phone, on my fridge, at work, to be able to expand my emotional vocabulary, to be able to not ignore or suppress my genuine emotion, but also know what that is and be able to express it to someone else. That is a tool and a skill that I did not learn in Unity or in my life, even with influential people in my life being social workers. Didn't get much of that because I was so shut down seeing, oh, I'm happy, I'm fine, I'm good. Okay, that doesn't mean much. So feelings wheel, just a hack for y'all as we become more and more awake. And I think as I become more awake to my own stuff and the stuff that triggers me in the world, which is all of my stuff, as I become more awake, I also apologize more. That when I am not listening or not validating, or I give unsolicited advice, or I shame someone, whether I know it or not, when I realize it, I go back and apologize. I make those amends. I say, I am so sorry that I did this to you. I realized it after the fact, and I still go and say that because that's part of my evolution, and that's part of our connection piece, is as I become more and more aware of it, because awareness is a good thing. If you catch yourself being toxically positive, if you catch yourself spiritually bypassing, it means that you're becoming more aware. And also, if there is an impact on yourself or others, it's probably a good chance to apologize. To be able to say, I'm so sorry. Heck, even to myself, probably hardest with myself. When I bypass my emotions, when I am inauthentic, when I, rely on my knee-jerk reaction of toxic positivity, I will apologize to myself because I need that apology to know that I am better than this and I'm becoming more aware of it. So those are kind of my thoughts on where to start. And of course, ourselves first, because if we are not doing it, I don't think we're very good stewards of being able to tell someone else what to do.
I definitely agree with everything that's been said. So in the moment, if someone is coming to me and is sharing something kind of heavy, this morning I was reflecting on like what do I do? Because I do notice within myself the desire to be like, it's going to be okay. Like, it'll be all right. Because I authentically believe that I will be next to this person's side until it is okay. And eventually it won't feel as hard. But that never feels good in the moment for someone else to hear. And so one of my practices is like, if this is in person, which this has been a long time now, but I will shift my body to sit next to the person as a way to, if I don't always have the right words, like maybe I can, show that I'm here and next to you in this moment to be listening and shift that body language, making sure that rather than having crossed arms, my arms are open, allowing a physical space of safety for the person that I love and that's across from me or next to me. And then also noticing, am I holding my breath? Am I tightening my body? Can I, in order to create more space for this person, can I regulate my breathing so that my limbic system and I'm not having a physiological response to what they're saying to try to be the best listener and the best space holder that I can be. And then, especially as my mom has been sick, there's times where a friend calls and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a rough time. And if I know that I am short on space, then I communicate that. And I say, I love you and I definitely want to hold space for you. In this moment, I'm feeling like I can't really do that right now. Can we schedule a time? And so, allowing myself to actually have boundaries, which is something that's been in my own healing work. I feel like I should be on all the time. I'd rather be able to punt that down the road in a time where I'm really able to hold space for someone, rather than not really having the space and then it actually doing more bad than good. Those are just some of my kind of more random thoughts.
That is great. I'm just really humbled by all of this. It's so exciting to see all the different places that this went, how relatable it's all been. At this point, we do have a couple more moments. So I'd like to, there's so many things that have happened in the chat, and I feel like we've addressed some of them. But if you had something specifically you wanted the panel to address, or if one of the panelists wanted to scroll back in the chat and address something, I would be open. I have to say I agree, Alicia. This has been an amazing springboard. I've been amazed the 2 times that I posted about these topics on the Facebook group, how many people came forward, how the stories were similar, and how we are, there's really, for me, this is all deeply personal, because Unity gave me a lot of good things, like Y.O.U. specifically, as, I'll go me too, like a sexual trauma survivor, I'm not really going into that for trigger purposes, but Y.O.U. gave me a home, and an incredible place to heal my heart, but also the flip side of that is with, I also heard things like, again, like your trauma's your greatest gift, or like, or even like you start to get into some sort of justifying, like, well, like you probably chose this because, and I didn't choose that. So, yes, we can definitely leave the text channel open. I didn't know, actually, go in this direction if we don't have any other questions. Our panelists, are there any further, we can do, final thoughts. That seems, although I get it, like, you can't take silence to mean a lack of interest. This has definitely been an incredible conversation. All right, let's do that. Let's go to some final thoughts, and I'll give each panelist a chance to kind of to take it away. Is anyone ready to go first?
Just before,
Yes, go ahead.
there's a question in the chat that says, can you go over amends as they differentiate from apologies in some ways? I feel like that might be just a great thing to add in the closing, if that's something that...
Yeah, I was actually hovering around that thought too. I would love for us to address that. That sounds like a green light.
I mean, I'll kick it off because I'm pretty sure I said that. You get in that flow and you're just like, did that come out of my mouth? Hey, I'll take it. For me, an apology is the words, which can be powerful, but apologies for me still leave me at a distance. So making amends for me is being able to connect or reconnect with the person who I may have hurt in that moment, or myself when I have hurt myself, to be able to connect in a very deep space of understanding, and to say those words from a different level of connection. Apology for me can be very surface level, and I can make apologies when I'm not really ready to make an amend. So I feel like it's an amend is an apology with a connection, is how I define it for me.
Sure, I'll pick up from there. There was a workshop that I led in when I was a teacher for older elementary students. So, 10 to, there were some sixth graders in there too. So I'll say that the age range is probably 10 to 12. And we were talking about kind of the algebra of an apology. And it taught me that there's different levels, there's different types of apologies. There's the casual, like, I'm sorry to hear that, to, and I think, I saw someone else comment in the thread that they say I'm sorry a lot. So there's definitely like a range of what I'm sorry is and how is it an apology. And I think one of the things that call out to me about a sincere, like the highest level, the master's level of apology is, and acknowledge, it's kind of like taking a step back. Okay, I'm sorry. So, communicating that you're apologetic, but also like, what is the apology for? Like, where was your sin, if you will? Where was your mistake? Why is it an apology for you? And so you deliver that, and then you make the acknowledgement of what you can do in the future, or what you should have done. And then what I really like about the idea about the amend is then taking it forward and going, okay, this is what we can do now, or what are our next steps? And that really brings in the connection. So it's kind of like taking a step back, not being a revisionist, but maybe acknowledging the immediate history that led to the apology, and then moving forward. That sounds like a good pathway forward for me.
All right, so we're ready to think of our closing thoughts. I would like to thank all of you for being here. The panelists, as well as everyone in the audience. It's been great to this discussion. I feel like validates so many of my thoughts and feelings. It takes me in a lot of good places, and I've been really excited. So So where do we go from here? So final thoughts, panelists, and as you're ready, we can pass the mic, so to speak. Or I'll just call you out.
I'm happy to go first on that. This is Lynn. Where do we go from here? I mean, it's so wonderful being, as I am one of the older members of the discussion here. It's so wonderful to see the younger people who, I can't believe I'm old enough to say that really, but who can see the need that is out there, not just in Unity, but overall. We need more self-awareness. We need more being aware of what's going on inside of ourselves and how to handle that. If we go to Unity's real teachings and we look in the books and we're reading and taking the experiences of Charles and Myrtle and Emily Cady, who talked about chemicalization, which was a chapter in her book that was taken out for a publication round because it wasn't positive enough, and then later put back in because it's important. It's an important part of things coming up and what we're talking about today. So it's just very heartening to hear your meaning, all of you, your awareness of needing to know how to deal with difficulties that come up in life, because they will. They did for Unity's founders. They will for us. That's just humanity. That's just life. And to do it with compassion for oneself, and bringing that compassion to others, even if they can't see what they're doing, and that's the way we lift. That's the way we lift the world. We're a Montessori school, and the more aware we are, the more we have a responsibility to carry the people who aren't quite there yet. And it doesn't mean we have to go to Starbucks with them, but we need to have compassion for them as much, maybe a little bit more for ourselves, but compassion for each other is really, really important.
This is Calallen. I'll go next. First I want to say thank you so much to everyone for their participation in this conversation, and I'm glad I could be here to be part of this conversation as well. I want to have a lot to process after this conversation, and judging by the chat room, it seems like we're all kind of working with this in some form or fashion. Alicia writes, okay, panelists, here's a question. How do you handle other people who are bypassing you or accept everyone being where they are on their journey? I call people out when they're bypassing me. I confront. That's my style. It's not the style for everyone, and it doesn't work best all the time. So mileage may vary. But if I don't feel like I'm being heard, if I feel like there's a deflection in the response, I'll call it out. And guys, I'll do it with you too. And I count on you to do it with me, because that's how I feel like we have authentic communication. But it's something to be. I'm sure there are loving ways to do it, and there are times where I'm more loving than I'm not. So that is my response. So anyway, those are my closing thoughts, and I feel like this is going to be an ongoing conversation. So I look forward to more dialogue on this. I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I want to say thank you. It was really an honor to be here, and was extremely healing for me and my journey with the Unity Church. So I just want to thank all of you for being a part of that. My final thoughts is this is a journey on both ends of noticing our parts where we participate in spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity, and then also on the receiving end and receiving it, right? So it's a journey, and I want to remind everyone that you're worth having your feelings validated, you're worth having boundaries, you're worth having needs, and you're worth having your needs be met, and you're worth healing your story, whatever that looks like. So sending love to everyone. My final comment is I'm here for you guys. If you do have questions, you can find me on Facebook in the group as Brittany Landry. I'm married. That's my new name. But also, like, my coaching name is Brittany Young Landry. So if you can find me on Facebook, or that's probably the easiest way. But if there's so that's it. I'll pass.
I am Brittany, that touched some deep part of my soul. So I am just, sitting in my feelings, crying those tears. Worthy is what we are. Loved is what we are. Man, I'm just so grateful to be a part of this. Being a young person, I think in so many spaces, and for my personal experience, being a young person in ministry is lonely as heck. And thank you for just letting me see that this is where I'm needed, where this conversation is necessary. Please don't give up on unity just yet, because I think that we are changing. This is the change right here. These are the conversations of where we started in a common spot and where we are moving forward. Brittany, you said it so eloquently that this is a journey. This is a journey, and we are part of this, and we have autonomy and wisdom and responsibility to be able to continue doing this in ourselves. You wouldn't have shown up if you hadn't have already started this process. Even if you didn't know the language for it or the words for it, you have started this process of being a human who gives a shit about this world, and we need that so much. And so as we continue to do our work and become more aware, I just invite you to extend that to the people around you in whatever way that looks, whether that's engaging in conversation, whether that's asking, what do you mean by that? If it's being able to call someone, I don't use the verbiage of calling someone out, I call someone in. Let's have this conversation. Let's meet in a common space. Let's connect together, because I want to understand. I want to see you for the goodness that you are, and understand you at your depth. And this is what we're here to do. I think there are barriers in our way in toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing, and we are doing that beautiful step together to be able to make this world a little bit better each and every day. I'm going to be a minister. I'm not speaking right now. I don't have a church right now, but when I do, I'll post on my Facebook, Lilly Sandberg. I hope y'all get to have your butts in one of my pews or a virtual church at some point in time. I am excited to be a minister for you all, because we deserve that. We deserve to have someone who isn't going to buy into the stuff that wasn't working before. So just thank you from the depths of my being for being part of this, and for taking the time to engage in this work. You are all so very loved. I hope you remember it. And if you need a reminder, just reach out.
All right. So once again, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Hang on for just a second. Here's what's up next. Before we all jump off, the next things up are family groups. If for some reason you didn't get in a family last night, or we're just going to start some new families. We're going to put some people with other families. So if that's something that you're interested in, on the left-hand side of the screen, you want to scroll down to the Family Center and just drop yourself into that FAQ chat and tell them I'm here to be put into a family. That would be great. We also have a voicemail we're going to set up so you guys can call and share some of your feelings. We would love that. That number is the same as our text number. It is 816-287-1435. If you want to call and give us some of your thoughts, We can share those on here. Community connection rooms. If you're not interested in family, but you want to check out some spaces where we are, there's a couple different text channels over there where you can talk about different topics. There's also a connection room where you can come and join there. And beyond that, after families, there's some cool workshops this afternoon.